Our presence in the Middle East is meant to guarantee that all oil is traded in the US dollar. That's because of something called the petrodollar. Like I said, before our dollar used to be on the gold standard, meaning every dollar that we created was backed by the same amount of gold in our reserves. We came off of that, meaning that our currency had nothing to back its value. Hello family, we're back with another video. I know we've been talking a lot about the MAGA cult lately and just a lot of the crazy stuff going on over there, but we haven't really touched much on this whole Iran situation. And, you know, I'm big on geopolitics. I'm big on knowledge in general, so I've definitely been keeping up on what's going on. I'd love to hear how you guys feel about it. But today, we have our guy, Kyle Kalansky. Again, if you don't follow this channel, if you're not over there at Secular Talk, go ahead and give them a subscribe and get tapped in with them. He's got some great info. Today, he has a great video. As you see the title, the U.S. has been defeated. Professor Pape drops devastating Iran war news on Trump. And I got some information that I did some research on just to add some further context that I think might be missing from this conversation as well. But as usual, please drop a comment. You know, I love to think, I love to talk. So if you drop something that's interesting, maybe give me some new information on this that I'm not seeing. I might just buy you lunch. But without further ado, let's get right in.
So Professor Pape, the geopolitical expert, has been talking about this war with Iran. He's actually run war games when it comes to this war. So there's nobody who's more educated about the facts of this war than this guy. This guy knew exactly how it would unfold. This guy has all the expertise that anybody could bring to this issue. And he said something which is genuinely jaw-dropping about where we're already at in this war. Take a listen. Here we go.
This is not a ceasefire. This is a shift in global power. So what you are witnessing, and this is why it's unclear will the ceasefire hold, is a massive shift that has been occurring, and it will occur even more in the future. But it's a shift where the United States has just suffered its worst strategic defeat since the Vietnam War. And this may even become worse, a bigger defeat than the Vietnam War. Well, Iran has, in just 40 days, emerged as a rising fourth center of world power. And those facts, those strategic facts, are represented by the fact that the United States and President Donald Trump have accepted, true as a basis for negotiation, but effectively have accepted a 10-point peace plan, which is all in favor of Iran. It does not provide any strategic gain for any of the goals that the United States had before the war, and is doing nothing to reverse Iran's rising global power. Iran, of course, on the flip side, has gained the opposite. It has all of its enriched uranium. That is enough for 10 to 16 working nuclear weapons. It has effective control, and now effectively permanent control of the Straits of Hormuz, which means 20% of the world's oil. It can dictate the terms. And then over the months and years, it will be able to take that greater oil revenue, that greater power, and almost surely fashion nuclear weapons. There is not going to be anything that the United States can do about that, or the world.
The comparison he made about Vietnam is very interesting. It's very stark and it's very telling of what the future may hold here. In Vietnam, it was the terrain, the climate, and the style of warfare that really made it incompatible with the U.S. And what made that loss for us was not that Vietnam killed all the American soldiers there or turned around and invaded America afterwards. It's just a simple fact that America, even the smaller superpower that it was at the time, didn't quite literally just steamroll Vietnam. It should have been completely one-sided, and that didn't happen. So that was a loss for America. Of course, it's not told that way to us in school or thought of that way. But if you ask anyone, they'll say, we got our asses ran out of Vietnam. It was not good. The difference is, like he said, they didn't leave, a fourth superpower of the world afterwards, and that's what's happening here in Iran that people aren't quite understanding. Again, it's not, Iran doesn't lose if we leave and just stop. We've, yes, destroyed some capabilities. Turns out we actually gifted them their Air Force and their Navy back in the 50s or 60s. So the things we've destroyed have essentially just been stuff that we gave to them, and their their missile capability is completely still intact. So, and not only that, but like you said, they have control of the Strait of Hormuz now. The bottom line being, similar to Vietnam, it's a mismatch as far as our power versus the country we're attacking, and we should just steamroll them, but we don't. In Vietnam, we just got ran out of there, and it's the end of the world. Vietnam just went on to, do its thing. In this, though, Iran is going to leave this stronger for it, much stronger, not just a little bit stronger, but much stronger than they were before. And we got nothing. They have all the uranium that they had before. We had deals with them. We're going to talk about the nuclear deals that were in place, but we had deals. Those deals are no longer in place, and they control the Strait of Hormuz, and they still have all their uranium. So it really was just poorly executed, and the outcome of that is going to be poor, and we shall see.
Can do about that. There are no on-site inspections in this 10-point plan. They're not even mentioned whatsoever. And the fact is, Iran has gained so much power that, of course, the next step would be to fashion nuclear weapons. You could expect maybe 6 months before the first nuclear test, maybe a year, but not 10, 20 years into the future, the way we were thinking with the Obama deal some years ago. So these are the geopolitical realities. And this is not just about a ceasefire. Again, this is a new balance of power in the world.
So that is a devastating diagnosis of where we're at. He calls Iran a rising fourth center of world power because of how they've been able to withstand the U.S.'s illegal and offensive war against them. Okay? Let's walk through this here because right now, Trump is caught. And effectively, there's nothing the U.S. can do to get that Strait of Hormuz opened, which means Iran has the global economy by the balls. And so what Trump is looking at now is, do I do a ground invasion? Okay, well, that would be an absolute disaster. We'd have a lot of U.S. soldiers who die, and absolutely nothing would come of it whatsoever, okay? Should we just do an endless war, which is the path that we're on right now, which, again, all the incentives are pointing in that direction because the U.S. empire simply won't accept defeat. Should he nuke them? That's the other thing which is terrifying because, of course, he's dumb enough to think about that, and he's fucking immoral and sadistic enough to think about that. The best case scenario would be Trump basically fake declaring victory and getting out. But if he does that, functionally, he's agreeing to Iran's terms, okay? And those terms, even though they were, they were agreed to in a preliminary sense as a basis for negotiations, but just the head fake in that direction means they were demanding no more attacks on them, Iran controlling the Strait of Hormuz and can charge fees to use it, uranium enrichment allowed, all sanctions lifted. Iran wants reparations from the U.S. for this illegal war. They want the U.S. to withdraw all troops in the Middle East and shut all U.S. bases, which would just simply put be the end of the U.S. empire. And then they also want to block Israel's war on all fronts, including on Lebanon. So just the fact that these things are in the conversation is a massive defeat for the United States of America. And to put this as simply as possible, as long as Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, which very clearly now they can just control it like this in perpetuity, right? They win. They win. Because that's 20% of the world's oil and gas that goes through there. That means they have the global economy by the balls. That means if they start charging, which they are now, or they start saying we're going to trade in yuan to go through the Strait of Hormuz, well, then that's the end of the unipolar world. That's the end of the U.S. as the world's sole superpower. And that's now a multipolar world. And so now we're looking at a situation, rising China, right? China has surpassed us in many respects, if we're being honest. And
I'm going to let them keep cooking there, but that's something I think people really aren't understanding, and that is the petrodollar. So we're not in the Middle East because we need their oil to put gas in our cars. Our presence in the Middle East is meant to guarantee that all oil is traded in the US dollar. That's because of something called the petrodollar. Like I said, before our dollar used to be on the gold standard, meaning every dollar that we created was backed by the same amount of gold in our reserves. We came off of that, meaning that our currency had nothing to back its value, making it a fiat currency. And there's no stability in that. You can't be a world currency with no type of solid actual backing, right? So they attach it to one of the most important things in the world, and that's oil. You know, not only does everything get to us with oil, from the ships to the trucks to the Uber delivery driver, the gas in his car or whatever, but a lot of these products are made with oil, some sort of petroleum. So it really does make the world go around. It was key for the American empire to have control of the Middle East because that's where most of the world's oil comes from. Even if we don't need their oil, like I said, we're a very oil-rich country. we still need to make sure that the rest of the world is only doing business in the US dollar. It's kind of just like selling drugs, basically. You can't let anybody trap on your block. You have to make, and if they are, they're going to be selling your product. And that's the case. The case in the product in this case is the US dollar, not necessarily the oil. Again, we want our currency to be the strongest so that it's good everywhere, strong for trade, et cetera, et cetera. But now, again, we risk losing that. We risk losing that dominance if this happens. If they get us out of the Middle East and we no longer can regulate over there and make sure that they're only, selling our work, then, they're going to start making their own deals. And that's essentially what we are facing right now. So what I wanted to do here is take a look at the country of Iran, since he mentioned a ground invasion, and just why that's such a horrible idea. So for context, what he's talking about, the Strait of Hormuz, that is this area, 20% of the world's oil flows through here, out of this strait. Iran is right here. Their country borders it, this whole waterway, the Persian Gulf, and, they're not letting anyone pass through. They have control of that. Before, they weren't, and then if you look at the country of Iran, it's not really doing it justice with these. I mean, I guess it really is, but these are mountains. These are mountain ranges up here in this country. So it's not like you can just storm the ocean, right? Because then that's going to cut off the Strait of Hormuz, which defeats the purpose. And it's not like you can just put ground troops anywhere because they still have ballistic missiles that can hit anything. So where are you gonna drop these troops from? They've already hit all the bases in this area. So it's just a really bad situation. And people are talking about this as if the goal of Iran is to beat America and then invade America, like come over here and do something to us. When no, like we started it with them. Their only goal right now is to survive. And they have a very high chance of doing that. And by doing this, by shaking up this beehive, we've essentially given them the perfect situation to exact their leverage and not look out of place doing it. If they would have shut down the Strait of Hormuz and done all this at any point before, the entire world would have jumped on them. But, now they're the little guy. Now they're defending themselves, and they can make these terms and they can do these kind of things because we attacked them, because specifically Trump was stupid enough to attack them. This plan has been on the board, and we'd have to talk about, again, the petrodollar, the installing of centralized banking systems all across the world in the Middle East, and you would see this was a plan long ago. Iran is just the last country on the list who doesn't have that centralized banking system in the Middle East, at least. So that's really what this boils down to, and this has been a plan. Again, Trump is just the first president stupid enough or egotistical enough or whatever to actually do it and make it happen. Or maybe this was just part of the bigger Illuminati, Freemasonic plan, and it's just time now, or whatever the case may be. But that's the real nature of this, and I just feel like sometimes people aren't talking about it, aren't understanding it fully and speaking of it in the right way, and what winning or losing this would actually look like. And I got a little more for you later, so let's continue.
And now you have Iran, an ally of China, and they're now flexing power. And by the way, the logic that Iran is going to walk away with is, oh, we're idiots. Apparently, this option was there all along for us to become a massive global center of power. All we had to do was actually punch the bully in the face. All we had to do was actually defend ourselves from the illegal aggression of the U.S. empire. Because think about where they were before this. They were sanctioned to the high heavens. They did not control the Strait of Hormuz. The economy was in shambles. Basically, Obama had them checkmated with the nuclear agreement, which meant they actually weren't going to build a nuclear weapon, and we just returned their own money to them and relieved the sanctions. But then when Trump ripped up that agreement and put the sanctions back on, the lesson they took away from that is we can never trust the West at all about anything, ever. Because, we abide by the deal, we agreed to the deal, we followed the deal, and then they spit in our eye and ripped up the deal anyway. Why the fuck would we make any deal with them ever again? And the other thing they learned is, well, we better get a fucking nuke, because obviously if you have a nuke, that protects you from aggression from the U.S. and Israel, the axis of Epstein. I mean, you look at North Korea, they can't do shit to him. Kim Jong-un has a nuke. You look at Gaddafi, he gave up his weapons of mass destruction, and he was overthrown. Look at Saddam, he didn't have weapons of mass destruction, he was overthrown. And so what they learned is, oh shit, everybody better get a nuke. Now you're going to have all these different countries trying to get nukes around the world because they know that's the only way to protect against the axis of Epstein. That's the only way to protect against aggression against our country. It provides a deterrent, and people now know that. So they control the strait. They're making more money off oil.
That's a perfect tangent or perfect segue, actually. I did a little bit of research on nuclear proliferation. Nuclear proliferation is the spread of nuclear weapons across countries. Starts in the mid-20th century and is tightly tied to World War II, the Cold War, and modern geopolitics. Here's a clear, grounded breakdown. So there's a lot here, but I think the most important parts are just these three first opening segments in relation to what Kyle said. So where it all began. The nuclear age begins with the Manhattan Project, 1942 to 1945, a secret U.S. program involving scientists like Robert Oppenheimer, the guy in the movie. They got to make a movie about this stuff, predictive programming, get us all primed for the idea before they actually, start tossing it around in the reality for real. The first and only use in war. The United States is the only country to have ever used nuclear weapons in combat. And I just think, I'm going to go full screen for that. I just think it's funny. Like, we have to understand, and I really don't get how, there's somebody I've been talking to recently, and they're really adamant that this war is justified because, of the threat of nuclear war from Iran. But we are the only people to have ever done it. So it's just insane for us to be running around and being like, oh my God, you're gonna nuke somebody, when we're the only ones to have ever actually done it. And just to be so worried about what everybody else is doing with their news and all that. But again, it goes on to say, who got nuclear weapons first? I guess the fourth section is important too, because it gives us this whole timeline. And you can just see, 1945, we started this. 1945, Soviet Union's right behind us. 1952, UK's right behind them, because you're not going to let your neighbor have a whole nuke right next to you, right? So, of course, France is like, dude, we don't even like these Brits, so, of course, they're going to get one soon after. China's like, oh, my, like, what are you guys even doing? This is 1964. And then, again, not too soon after that, India, Pakistan, Israel says widely believed, but not officially confirmed. Okay, and then, of course, North Korea. But there's a start to the dominoes here. There's a clear start to the dominoes here, and we started this, and we used it first. It's not like we just developed it and tested it and just like, hey, we're going to use it. Like, no, we definitely started this, and to now, it's just interesting how that is skipped, how nobody really talks about that. Like, how dare you guys sit up here and act like holier than thou when you're the nuke nurse or something. I'm trying to think of a nuke, the nuke nebulous. You're the nuke nebulous around here. You get to control all the nukes because you started it. Like, no, dude, you're the one who scared everybody into this reality and made this so by actually making this and using it on people. So I just think that's interesting context that's often missed. But let's get back to it.
Because as we just described, Iran is now a rising fourth center of world power, and Trump has totally run out of options to the point where now, do I do a doomed ground invasion? Do I keep an endless war going, even though I theoretically campaigned on having no more endless wars? Do I nuke them and become basically one of the biggest monsters in world history, if not the biggest monster in world history, especially because Iran was no direct threat to us whatsoever and they still can't attack the U.S. homeland, right? Or does he do the best option, which is fake declaring victory and getting out? But in that scenario, you're functionally surrendering to the Iranians and saying, you know what, go ahead, you run the strait. You know what, okay, we're basically sacrificing the entire Middle East on the global stage and handing it over to not only Iran, but all of our enemies, handing it over to China functionally, and have the Belt and Road Initiative become, more widespread than it is right now. So it's just strategic blunder after strategic blunder, on top of the fact that this is just an immoral and illegal war, and innocent people are being killed on a regular basis. And every single step of the way, this was a catastrophe. Right? And by the way, of course, nobody's going to be surprised to hear this. Trump agreed to have this as a basis for negotiations. Then immediately those negotiations fell apart anyway. So there's a very good chance that this was just a ploy to reload again and try to go back to doing war crime after war crime, murder spree after murder spree. And just like they wanted to pause to replenish and reload to get back out there and continue to commit the war crimes. That's also very likely. But at the end of the day, clearly we can't do the regime change, and he can't steal the oil, and he can't control the strait. He proposed having a tax for ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz and letting Iran keep some of it, but he gets a piece of it. I'm not even kidding. He proposed that.
So like I said before, I did a little bit of research, and this ties right into the last point that Kyle made, that none of these military objectives have actually been completed in this conflict. And something that I've encountered when having this conversation with people is that, addressing the failures of this operation has somehow turned into support for the IRGC or support for Iran or something like that. And that's not the case. This has just been bad. This is a bad move. And even if it, in some world, it was a good move, the outcome has been bad. And that's really what we're looking at here. And I think people's ability to believe in the false narratives is rooted in their ability to believe that Iran is just some poor, weak country, because that's what I've heard. So I did a little bit of digging about Iran's military capability and where they stand globally. First one, it's a top-tier military, number 16 out of 145, large manpower and mobilization capability, 600,000 active personnel, hundreds of thousands more in reserves. Their massive missile arsenal, that's really what's holding a lot of this together. Like they're really just, they master those ballistic missiles. Strategic geography, we talked about that during the map. They are just in the right place. It borders the Strait of Hormuz, and it has a mountainous terrain, large land masses, a very big country. The implications of that being it's extremely hard to invade and occupy, kind of like we looked at on the map, and then you can disrupt, or they can disrupt, the global energy markets quickly, and we're already seeing that now. Moving along, we have their asymmetric warfare doctrine. This is key. Iran does not rely on conventional U.S.-style warfare. It instead focuses on ballistic missiles, drones, naval harassment tactics like fast boats and mines. They put a whole bunch of mines in the strait. That's kind of crazy. Proxy forces across the region. So those are the ones that they're calling the terrorist organizations. They're proxy forces. They're homies that they linked up with across that area. But hey, thank you guys for watching with me if you made it this far. I know we kind of got off into a rabbit hole on some different things. Thank you for going along on the research with me. As usual, drop a comment. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you on the next one.